Just so folks know, I am going to record this so that the people that can't make it will have access to it. We'll get going in a few minutes. I want to give people time to get in. I'm happy to see you all joining us. For those of you just coming in, we're going to get started in a couple minutes, give people time to get here. Yeah.
Well, mute.
Yeah. I went ahead and muted people. If you want to unmute to talk, just know that you've been muted. So to cut down on the background noise. I'm really happy to see how many of you are able to join us today. This is great. Um, I will be recording this so that people that can't make it have the chance to view it. I don't think it's going to be particularly exciting viewing or anything, but you know, hopefully it'll be informative. Okay, well, it is noon, and so we'll keep admitting people, but we're going to get started, and we'll start with how meet and confer went on the 19th of I'm sorry, the 17th of August. And I have the 19th in my head because that's when the contract implemented. And then we'll talk about the contract that just went into effect. And so I've got members of the Meet and Confer team here with me. So if you guys want to jump in and assist on any of these topics, that's great. But let's get started. So we met with staff, with management, deed management, back on August 17th. And we talked about the following things. We talked about safety and doing more for safety. And we'll just be continuing to push management towards, keeping us safer at our work locations. There's been issues downtown. There have been issues in Mankato. There have been issues at some other locations in the metro too. And so we're just trying to keep on top of that. I know that they have increased some police patrols, and they've been doing some things with badge access, but more definitely needs to be done, I think, to keep members safe. So we'll just keep dialoguing and talking about that. And then management actually brought an issue to us and said that they've done some range reassignments. For those of you who might not know what a range reassignment is, that is when you are at, like, say, a 5L or a 7L, and they've decided to move the entire range of your particular position so that, if you were like a 5L before and now you might be a 7L, or if you were 10L now you might be a 12L, to be more in parity with other similar jobs. It's happened, I guess, with some of our grants coordinators, and I think that's great. And they said that there should be more coming, and that they're planning that they've got them with MMB right now. They weren't prepared to talk about which positions they were. They weren't ready to be public with the information as far as who it's going to be and which ones. Probably in case some of them aren't approved, I'm guessing. But so there might be more range reassignments in the works, is what we're being told. And it to me sounds like it's something that if you think your position is maybe not not ranged correctly, to maybe talk to us about, so we can kind of push on them to make you be something that gets a range assignment. It's also something that we should be thinking about, like for the next round of supplemental negotiations. So yeah, if you or somebody you know is in that position, have them get in touch with the Meet and Confer team. So we talked about building issues right after we talked about safety, and the accessibility, particularly of the GMB building. Those of you that are here probably know what we're talking about. Signage is still not great. There are areas of the floor that are not the most accessible. A couple of the restrooms are terrible that way. We don't have like the buttons on all the doors. They've added them to some doors, but so we're still making some progress with that, but we have a ways to go. But they are planning on adding more Braille soon, and they're going to look at some of them. We've asked for the ADA audit of the areas that have been audited. Apparently, that's just been the restrooms so far, and then we're going to ask for an audit for the rest of the building. So if you have things that you have concerns about building wise, let us know. We've also pushed on some microwaves to the nursing mothers' rooms for sanitation. Still trying to get some clarity on bike parking, although they've been told that, that the rack is on the first floor by the freight elevator. Building management will help with access. So if you're having issues, let me know, and we'll get you in touch with the people that need to, work that out for you. And then, we asked about places that are being renovated. Can Deed proactively reach out during periods of renovation about reasonable accommodation? And we're told that there's something that's sent to leaders, but they could send it to teams too, so that people could, if they need to ask for a reasonable accommodation because you can't be there. Let's say you've got really bad asthma and that dust is going to hurt you. Maybe you could get a reasonable accommodation to not be at that location during the time of construction. And then we talked about paid family medical leave. As you know, that's being added to our agency. And they now have a director who's secured. You've probably seen that they've put out some more jobs, but most of them have been, in the planning stage. But they'll be probably in the next, towards the end of this year or next year, I should say, a lot more by then posted. So we expressed concerns about them not being temporary unclassified workers, and they said that they heard us, and that we're going to keep this on the agenda and be talking about it as we, get closer to actually opening up that agency. Does anybody else from the team want to talk about some of the additional issues, like what we got going? With safety or the equity adjustments, if anybody wants to step in so that they don't have to just listen to me ramble at them.
I can talk a bit about the accessibility stuff and the Meet and Confer that we're asking for
Yeah, go
that.
ahead. Yeah.
So we have expressed concerns to management about two processes that are at Deed controlled by the same office, which is ODEO. We've expressed concerns about the reasonable accommodation process and accessibility at Deed generally. As you know, we're oftentimes having to remind leadership things like PowerPoints aren't accessible when they're sent out to the main staff, or town halls aren't accessible, or if they are, there's technical issues. In addition to that, our office spaces are oftentimes not accessible, or if they are, they meet just the bare minimum of requirement. They're accessible but not welcoming to people with different abilities. And so we're asking for a special Meet and Confer around the topic of accessibility and also reasonable accommodation at Deed, because we've been concerned about some denials of reasonable accommodations as well, being basically, it's been the impression that if you are facing a disability that could impact your job, it seems that management has been less willing to accommodate those than if your disability does not directly impact your work. So for example, having like issues with being unable to drive when you're in a driving role. But anyways, so we're asking for a better understanding of that process and a better look at that.
Mhm.
So if you have stories around accessibility or reasonable accommodation, if you had frustrations with the process, or if you had a process that went particularly well, please let us know so we can understand what works in this process a bit better and also help work with our members and better advocate for folks so that Deed is truly an accessible employer.
We'd also like to work with them to make the process better. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes people get the reasonable accommodation that they want, but it takes forever and it isn't everything that's needed, or they have to get multiple, and then they have to renew something that's a permanent disability on a fairly regular basis and that sort of thing. So, yes, anything that you want to share with us would be helpful. Um, did anybody else on the team want to talk about the equity analysis that's been going on?
I can take that, Maureen.
I thought you might want to.
Yeah, I'll
Thanks.
I'll take
Mhm.
it. Yep. This is Chandra. So, there's some things going on as far as equity adjustments. It started right now. The most I have information about is regarding VRS and SSB surrounding the counselor career level, and several people, well, basically everybody in the classification was asked for updated resume and information to go along with an equity analysis that they are doing on basically the pay of people who are in that counselor career role. From what we have found out, we are being told that October is the month that we should be seeing some movement on that. There's a little bit of there's a little bit of gray area about whether or not that means it's going to be like done and we should all have some information by then, or exactly what's going on. But the good news is that there's movement being made there. And if people don't know about the equity analysis process, it's something that exists within MAPE. It's in our contract that if you feel that you have a pay in equity that can be proved, or you have data to back that up, you can put in a request. And I'm more than happy to talk to anybody who has questions about that or wants to know more about it. But basically what's happening now within VR is that they're looking at the classifications as a whole, evaluating that information, and then using it to determine if there needs to be adjustments to people's pay, what steps they're on based on that. So it's kind of a complicated process, but we are happy to know that it's moving forward. We have a rough date. I mean, October is a long month, but we'll kind of see how things play out with that. And then I know it seems to be more of a thing that's getting out, that more divisions know about it. And if you have questions or feel like you want to look into an equity analysis for yourself, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can kind of help you with that process and where to get the information.
Thanks, Chandra. Appreciate that. So, we got a copy of the deed affirmative action report. We asked them in the future to let us know when we get that and to present it to us. But we talked about it, and we're going to be analyzing that for data requests and to get some more information about what actually is being measured in the affirmative action report and maybe what might not be being measured in the affirmative action report. We also asked Deed to do more respectful workplace training. And I don't know if any of you have ever had to submit a respectful workplace complaint, but it's also a pretty lengthy process, and it feels like it has a lot of barriers to get through them. And so we're trying to get them to work with us on that more. We've been told that there is going to be more training modules on respectful workplace. Um, and things like that. So we'll see, but we're going to keep pushing on that as well, because there's a real perception that you're going to get retaliated against if you file a respectful workplace complaint. People are afraid to do them, and then that just emboldens the culture of fear in the areas where the respectful workplace issues are happening. So we're trying to work with management to get some of those barriers eliminated and to, get more training so that people can feel more secure in filing when they need to, but also maybe eliminating some of the need because people learn better what types of behaviors shouldn't be happening in the workplace to begin with. So, because it's been rough on some folks who've needed to file a respectful workplace policy or are experiencing disrespect in the workplace right now. They're afraid, and understandably so. And we want to be able to help people not have to be afraid to report these things because that's what the respectful workplace is for. I mean, if you're not being respected, if you're being treated disrespectfully, you should be able to talk about that and to file that and to feel secure in being able to do that without having it blow back on you. We also looked into file requests, and they're going to try and get a better process for that mapped. In the meantime, if you need to get a hold of your file for whatever reason, reach out to your HR generalist, whoever that's assigned to. If you need help finding that person, you can get in touch with somebody on this team about that, and we can help you get your file if you're having any issues at all with that. And then we also asked to add IDI training as one of the suggestions for meeting the new employee development plans. And if that's something that you're interested in, you should talk to your supervisor about that. It's an index. I know we have a couple of people on here who've been through it, and Michael has his hand up, so I'm going to let him go with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the IDI is the Intercultural Development Inventory. It was
Mhm.
developed by Dr. Mitchell Hammer, who's a psychologist. And basically, what it looks at is, how do you approach and understand cultural difference? And it divides the responses across a spectrum with, I think there's like 5 or 6 stages. And it's to help you understand where you are and how you approach it, and then give you guidance towards moving to a more intercultural mindset if you're not in the intercultural stages, or maintaining that intercultural mindset and preventing burnout if you are. One thing I do want to mention too, in addition to kind of some of the stuff we talked about with respectful workplace, we submitted a data request because we want to get a better understanding of how this policy at Deed is implemented. Kind of to Maureen's point, many MAPE members are afraid of retaliation and afraid to submit complaints. And when they are, they're oftentimes left in administrative limbo. Whereas we know that when supervisors submit complaints, those times often escalate into situations requiring a steward or something else. And so what we want to get a better understanding of is there any differences in how this policy is applied between MAPE members and management, and getting a better understanding of how long it takes to resolve these issues when they come up, because timely resolution is also really important when you submit these complaints to ensure that they're taken seriously. And to be blunt with you all, management pushed back. They did not want to give us this data. They actually don't track this data, which was a little bit shocking in and of itself, that there isn't a centralized place where they're tracking and processing respectful workplace complaints, because that's an MMB policy. And so that's going to be a concern that we bring forward as well. But we'll let you know as we continue this data request back and forth. It's likely that this will be an iterative thing, but we really want to be able to get an understanding of how this policy is being applied, because this policy initially started as a MAPE policy, an anti-bullying policy. It came out of Ely, right? And we want to make sure that that it's still being used for its intended purpose, which is to prevent bullying of MAPE employees.
Mhm. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, it was a really bad situation up there, but that is where we ended up with the respectful workplace policy, and they actually removed a few supervisors in those roles in the Ely office because of the culture that was of bullying that was going on. So, it's something that it's helpful if we all band together onto, I think, like if 3 people are all experiencing problems with the same supervisor, if they all complain, I think that that helps. So, sometimes working together to do that, it shows that that that's going on, and that it's going on with more than one person. And it's frustrating that it happens at all when, we're trying to work towards, being a more equitable and accessible deed, right? Um, and if you're experiencing this, please reach out to somebody so that we can help in any way that we can. Um, and, some issues that we'll be bringing back are some of the ones that we've just been talking about, but we'll also be talking about temp unclassified labor as we go forward. We believe that deed misuses it, and it allows people to be fired without having to have a reason to fire them, but yet still say it's for cause. And I think that that's ridiculous because you have rights under the contract for due process and just cause for your firing, but they don't need that when you're temporary unclassified. So if you have things that you want us to bring to meet and confer, let us know. Reach out to me, reach out to Michael, reach out to any member of this team, and we'll be happy to talk to you more about it and talk to management about it. So with that, I did see that there were some questions in the conflict on, in the chat. Does anybody feel that their question wasn't answered? I know some of them were typed back or whatever, but it's hard to read them all while we're talking. So if I missed anyone, maybe raise your hand or maybe type it again.
I'll just say before we address questions, two things. One's a little fun promotion, and then the other one is just related to some of the stuff that we were just talking about. So a fun promotion, our local 501, which is the Great Northern Building, is doing a labor history series. It has been, we are working with Dr. Peter Ratcliffe, who's a labor historian at McAllister. It's been his first session was really fun and insightful. We're doing a second and a third session in October and December, and I would welcome everyone in Indeed to attend. He's a really good presenter. He's willing to answer questions. It was just a really fun time. We recorded the first session. If folks are interested, I posted it in the chat. And then the only other thing I'll mention too, in addition to what Maureen was saying about upcoming meet and confer, we've already checked in with management about some things in the contract. For example, the vacation accrual forms, we're working with them to see if they're going to buy into the updated policy, which seems like they will, and then how they're going to implement that. We're also probably going to ask for additional unpaid medical leave for TU people. Just because, to Maureen's point, we abuse it, and so we have a lot of them. So the least we can do is let them take some medical leave, as well as the other benefits for TU that were negotiated.
Right. And those are things that are now in the contract. So, yep. We're working to get those. So I did want to switch tracks and talk about the contract now briefly, since it's now been agreed to. As you may know, about 90% of us voted for the contract of those that voted, and about 70% of us voted. So was higher turnout than we've had in the last 5 contracts at least. And yes. And before I move on, Rick has his hand up. So go ahead, Rick.
I just wanted to add on that respectful workplace conversation. I want to say kudos to everybody that serves on the DEED Employee Engagement Committee. I was assigned to a subcommittee to address providing safe feedback. And we've got a lot of situations that we've heard about bullying or fear of retaliation for speaking up about stuff. We get a lot of those situations. We have made a request that our subcommittee can do individual surveys within the divisions to understand where the problems are. And then we've also requested a quarterly meeting with the commissioner himself, because it seems like a lot of our complaints are getting to the wrong people. They're not getting to the top decision makers that are able to make change going down. So we do have the ear of the commissioner. He is joining us for the next employee engagement committee, the large one. And we're hoping to provide some feedback and get some buy-in from there. So if you guys have any suggestions, ideas, want to share a story about how you may have been bullied or whatnot in your situation, please let me know. I will keep everything confidential because obviously that's our concern, is providing safe feedback. I am one of those folks that are willing to stand up and share experiences and whatnot without caring. With that said, please share with me. And if you have any other ideas about how we can address these issues, that's another issue or another thing you could share with me. That's it.
Yeah, it's super exciting to have a member of the Meet Confer team on the employee engagement committee because where there's concerns that overlap, and there often are, you now have somebody that has an in on that team and can help work with that team, because that team is made up of members and management and like staff all over the organization. And so sometimes they've got more sway, sometimes less, but this way we could all work together to try and get some stuff done. So thanks, Rick. I really appreciate that. And
Before we move to the contract, there was
Mhm.
one question about respectful workplace that I think we should probably answer for the benefit of everyone. It's from Dan Krell.
Oh, I
It's
probably
if
didn't
we
see it.
have
Thanks. Mhm.
yeah, if we have a complaint against a fellow MAPE employee, i.e. a violation of the deed respectful workplace violation, should we submit the complaint through union leadership first for resolution, or submit a deed respectful workplace violation? I guess like my response, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen, I feel like it really depends, right? Like if it's like a situation where you think that it could be solved with like a steward or like a non-employer third-party mediator, like if you think it's like something like they're being unintentionally disrespectful, or like you think they maybe just need a little bit of a firm hand but not too firm, then sure. But if this person's being bad or abusive, like if you don't feel comfortable
We're
talking to
safe.
them or working
Yeah.
with them or safe,
Mhm.
then you should definitely report that to management.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry that there isn't like a one, it's kind of a judgment call that you have to make, but
Mhm.
that's a tricky thing, and that's why we want to make sure we have a good policy, right? So that way every complaint gets resolved at the level that it needs to be resolved at.
Yeah. I mean, if you think it could be resolved by a steward sitting down with somebody and saying, I'd really hate to see this become a respectful workplace policy violation, and if you could, work on this, that would help. You know, I would, it doesn't hurt to try that. But if you have to file it, you have to file it, because people should be able to feel safe at work. So, did you guys hear that we have a contract? Yeah. And 5.5%, we should be seeing that on our checks soon. And then we should also be seeing retro pay, hopefully within the next 6 weeks or so. MMB hasn't communicated the date that they're going to pay that, but they will. And when they do, we'll make sure we share that. And so, then, next year's raise will just go on automatically, effective July 1st. So, yeah, we have several negotiators in this room right now because Deed likes to be there. So, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. That sounds about right, Rick. He said rumor mill is that it will be on the October 6th check. And so what other things are we getting with the contract? Well, Michael's already touched on a couple of those. The vacation accrual credit's been expanded. So it's still at the employer's discretion, but surprisingly or unsurprisingly, Deed's been pretty good about them within the confines of what they are right now. So if you meet the criteria, they've been the way it was written with the previous contract, they were granting them. What's changed is the 4-year look back. So it doesn't have to be within the last 4 years, the experience. And the other thing that's changed is it doesn't have to be a vacation eligible position anymore. So if you've been denied in the past because maybe you couldn't substantiate that the position was vacation eligible, or it had been too long, I would consider giving it a little bit of time and then resubmitting it again. So that's one of the things that's changed. Definition of family has been expanded. So who you can take your sick leave for or use your bereavement leave for is changed. And generally, it's who you love, you should be able to take that time off and take them to the doctor if they need to be, and things like that. So, in the past, it was very difficult to perhaps take an in-law to the doctor even. So this has changed some of that. And like nieces and nephews are now included for those kinds of things, especially if somebody's in your household, they should be covered. So, but yeah, it's been expanded quite a bit. And if you have any questions about that, get back to us. But some of it's deliberately ambiguous because it's following the statute that was changed, for the family medical leave and who you can use it for. So that's been changed. We now have in tier 1 and tier 2 free mental health visits. And then it's going to be at a set copay for tier 3 and 4, and which is lower than it would be for other medical care. And when I say free, I mean free. You wouldn't pay the deductible. It doesn't count towards the deductible. You don't pay a copay on it. So if you're in tier 1 or tier 2 for mental health visits. Some other things, I don't know, we've got several negotiators here, so I'd love to have you guys jump in and talk more about the contract, because you should be really proud of the work that you did.
I mean, telework, if you are experiencing any changes to your telework schedule, anytime now, they are required to meet with you first, and you're allowed to bring in a steward so we can talk about, why they're doing this and get a better understanding and potentially push back. States also have to, or state agencies also have to implement an appeal process so that if you disagree with your manager's determination of your telework status, you can appeal that. I'm trying to think of what else. If you want to voluntarily reduce your hours with agreement with your supervisor, that's another thing that you can do. That might be particularly important with DEED and this IDP stuff that we're doing, as there's a lot of intentional professional development and stuff, and so you might need to have less hours to go to school or something. We also have voluntary work reassignment within 35 miles if your supervisor, or beyond 35 miles, it's already within, but beyond 35 miles if your supervisor agrees. So if let's say you work in the career force in Albert Lee, and then you move to, I'm praying this is 35 miles away, you move to St. Paul, or more than 35, you move to St. Paul,
It
and you
is.
work at the Midway, yeah, I figured, and you work at the Midway career force, you can have your supervisor move you and it won't create a vacancy as long as they agree.
Dental coverage was raised a little bit. Trying to think. I mean, there's a whole TA presentation, but ultimately, if you were waiting for a new contract provision to go through, it's now been implemented as of August 19th. And the only thing that's retro is pay, and we will get the retro pay. But if you wanted one of the new provisions of the contract, that's what it's going to be. Yeah, reducing hours does usually impact your medical insurance if it's voluntary. Yeah. So and it's in the contract, like how you pay based on that. So, but yes, it does usually go up a little if you've reduced your hours.
We did increase the meal reimbursements.
Yes, yeah, that's a good one. So if you travel for work and you need your meals reimbursed, that's also gone up. And there's a few other things that I just feel like I've talked about them so much. I don't know if I've remembered them this time, but
Now,
yeah,
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to
Mhm,
across the boards. I've
mhm.
been with the state for 16 years, and a lot of people have been here longer. This is the largest increase that I have seen. So, although it's not exactly what everyone wanted, we got a really big win when it came to our across the boards. We
Mm.
pushed back. They started very, very low, and we insisted that we are worth much, much more, and we pushed all the way to the end. So I give kudos to the rest of the team as well. But that was no easy feat in order to get where we were as far as raises.
Yeah, it was. And oh, we don't talk about it much here Indeed because we don't have any employees affected by it. But there's this program called SERP. It's Corrections Early Retirement Program. Folks in corrections in really and also in direct care and treatment for DHS in the homes, for violent offenders and things like that. They do a very dangerous job and they can retire early. And there was a disparity in how their insurance was working for MAPE members versus the other bargaining units. We've been trying for about 10 years to close that disparity, and we managed to get that in this contract. And so it may not seem like a big deal to most people because it doesn't affect them, but for the people it affects, it's huge. Some of them were paying like more than $4,000 more out of pocket than their counterparts in the other bargaining units. So, you know, that's a pretty big win for the folks that it does impact. And we weren't willing to leave them behind. And I'm very proud of this team for holding firm and getting SERP. And one of our members who I know has us on listen because she's also in another meeting, was really instrumental in organizing her group. She does have people that are SERP eligible in her group, and that would be Sheena Jewison. And I don't think without some of the organizing that those groups did in corrections and in direct care and treatment, writing to their commissioners, you know, writing to the governor, writing and just saying, you know, how important it was. I don't know if we would have gotten it this time. So the organizing effort that was done to get this was amazing. And they really should be proud of themselves because it's going to make life so much easier for a group of people that already do a really, really difficult job. And but I think we've covered most of the contract. We might have missed a couple things, but it is in the TA. And if you have any questions, let us know now. I did see one about the points and the deductible. And yes, it's ending after this upcoming year. So if you were going to try and participate for next year, you'd want to get the points this year so that you could have the deductible credit for next year.
Maureen, for clarification, the health
Mhm.
insurance all goes into effect January 1 of 2024. That does
Right.
not coincide with the same date as our contract. That is
Right,
always
right. Yes. Yeah, health insurance is always on the calendar year. Mhm. So the contract is implemented, but like Rick said, some things in the contract are healthcare, and healthcare always changes on the calendar year. So do you have questions? I'd love
Yeah.
to see.
To answer a couple of those questions in there. As far as I am understanding, the state MMB implementation date is August 19th. So if you had meals before that, you are not allowed to go back retroactively. If you have had meals since then, you should get the new rates. But yeah, there is no other retro stuff except our paychecks that will be done.
Right. And so everything is posted where Michael just put that. And then we'll have a new contract, you know, it's being finalized, like the actual new contract version, and then that'll be put out. But it's still being implemented. It usually takes a while for um, us to make sure that MMB doesn't have typos and them to make sure we don't have typos in our changes, and then it'll be officially posted. But that doesn't mean it hasn't been already implemented. Like I'm expecting honestly to see the raises on our next checks, you know, and then retro pay later, like probably October, first check in October maybe. So do you have any other questions?
One additional thing I'll note, I put it in the chat, but
Mhm.
there was a change to respectful workplace policy where repeated and intentional misgendering is inappropriate. That is not something that should be happening. And that's good. We really want that to happen. We've had several members be repeatedly misgendered, even though their pronouns are in their emails. They've said their pronouns to people. And so this is just a note that if you're experiencing that type of issue, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you with filing the complaint and going through the process. And then
Mhm.
just also as a reminder, for just a general reminder for folks to always check people's pronouns in their emails or their Microsoft tags, because especially as someone who often gets misgendered as a woman when I'm speaking on the phone, or if I don't have like my video camera on, it's uncomfortable for me. It's worse when you actually are a trans person. And so, yeah, just pay attention to pronouns when you can.
Mhm. Yeah, it's an easy enough thing to do. And honestly, if you make a mistake, just correct it. It's better to do that than to just continually misgender someone. And it is a respectful workplace violation, so don't do it, you know? But so if it's happening to you, Yeah, talk to us. We can help you file the complaint. I know that it was happening over in our disability determination services, and they've been they've agreed to like work on, doing some things to try and help that not be an issue over there. But also, we've asked for Anna and for like the ODEO office to look at that here indeed too and help, come up with some materials and some reminders and things for folks. So, because I think a lot of times people don't do it intentionally, but it's still not okay to do it. So, it's a good thing to just, think about that. And if you use your pronouns in your in your email address, that helps normalize it. So if you aren't doing that already, do it now, and that way people don't have to guess. Yeah, because they're going to use them on you regardless. So it's good to help people get it right. So any other
Larry asked
questions about anything? Yeah.
Larry asked about the reclassification effort.
Mhm.
I just kind of said in the chat, and I'll just say again for folks that they're
Mhm.
just being vague. I mean,
Mhm.
they say they're thinking about it and that they're looking at it. They
Mhm.
mentioned the grants management people. I can't remember if they mentioned anyone else.
Mhm. Yeah, so far that's the only ones that it's gone through for, and I don't know if that's even all the ones that they intended to have it go through for. So, but yeah, they kept it very close to the vest who else they were analyzing for that. But then there is the separate reallocation and equity adjustments that are being done in the voc rehab group, where they're trying to look at all of the counselors and do some equity adjusting there. So, and they've been told us that should be done by October, and they should have decided what they're going to do with that. No, hard copies will not be printed and handed out, but there will be a time frame where if you want a hard copy, you can request it. It's generally available online, and then like stewards and officers usually get a copy, but everybody else has to ask for one. So when that happens, when that window opens up, just make sure if you want one that you ask for it. And otherwise it'll always be posted online, and we can try and get you one. But if you ask for them while they're ordering them, that'll be helpful. You'll be guaranteed one then. So
Probably your local leadership or your business agent, depending on which local you're in.
mhm. I think they'll have a thing where you can click on it and just ask for one too. I think they had that last time. So um, when I notice that, I'll try and put it in an update for deeds that that window has been opened up to request a contract. Can VRS career counselors help with the reallocation efforts? I'm going to let you field that one, Chloe, if you're here, because I think you've been working with several of them already, right?
I think so in a sense, Annette. I mean, you
Mhm.
attending the newer MAC, I think to give feedback on the process and your experience, or connecting with others that aren't getting what they need from HR would be good as a collective. But as for where we're at in the process, we already know where Sarah from HR is at, where MMB is at, and it's just waiting for that to come to fruition in October. But I think keeping the conversation at MAC at that monthly meeting that their group has started would be the best route.
Okay. Were there any other questions? Like I said, I don't always see them because they fly past me, and I apologize. Did I miss anything? Feel free to retype something if yours didn't get answered because I missed it. Or raise your hand. Okay. Well, if you, we'll go ahead and end it here then. If you have any additional questions for anybody, feel free to reach out, via phone or via email. Reach out to any member of team if you have something you want us to take to meet and confer. And if you have any problems with any of the new contract implementations. Also, if you're interested in trying to organize around student loans, since that's been moved into the contract now, that's permanent, but it's at the agency's discretion, and our agency hasn't discretioned yet. So, let us know, and maybe we can do some organizing around that too, because I know there's a lot of us that carry student loan debt.
It's closed.
Dan, the actual contract like will be out soon.
Mhm.
We are currently going through, like Maureen said, the process of redlining and technical changes with MMB. We literally, as negotiators, just got the final contract to sign on to, like I want to say last week.
But in that tentative agreement toolbox, there is a red line version of it if you want to go look at it. And it'll have most of the changes.
Also, maybe for people who are newer to MAPE and newer to the state, the change over last spring about vesting, just so they know that piece has changed for them. I know it's not contract or MAPE, but it's probably really important to them.
Oh, yes. Legislatively, they changed the vesting period for the pension to 3 years. So those of you that were waiting to vest, you might be vested already now or vesting much sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah. Elena, I believe the language in there is a year for the student loan. But yeah, we would have to get Deed to agree to it. Thanks, Michael. I was just going to go grab that. So there's a link to it there. And then I would think the final contract will be posted soon.
Thank you.
All right. Did anybody have any other questions? All right. Well, I did record this for those of you that might have missed the beginning or any other part of it, or you have friends that weren't able to make it, we'll post it when we, when we can, probably in a few days. And then if you have any questions that you think of after we end this, go ahead and send them to one of us. Thank you so much for coming today. It was great to see you all.